Hello, and welcome to the Canadian Story, where we discuss what Canada is, what Canada could be, and what Canada should be.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Canadian Story. Today, we are joined by Jordan Macartney. Jordan, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you.
So, just off the top, why don't you tell everyone what it is you do and a little bit of background about yourself?
Well, I'm the current owner of a family-run business. We run it with my brother, who's equal partners with me. And we are the fourth generation of a food distribution company that originally started as a farm. And then from the farming, my dad took it into wholesaling because he realized there was more money in the wheeling and dealing than the farming. And then we took over from him. And here we are living in Ottawa. We're the fourth generation. It looks like the fifth generation is going to start in with us, with my nephew and my son starting in soon after they've done their degrees.
Awesome. So, what generation moved from farming into wholesale? Was that your father's generation?
Yeah, my father's generation. Yeah, he originally started selling his stuff down in the market.
Mm-hmm.
And then he found out that he was really good at wheeling and dealing and selling and speaking. So that's where he realized that there's just too much work in farming. And there's the hard part that farmers can't do, like wheeling it and selling. He was really good at. So that's why he just said, well, I'm just going to start buying the stuff and sell it because I know how to do the selling.
So how did he go about, did he go connect with other farmers and start?
Yeah, exactly. That's what he did. He went out to the country and started going to buy all the stuff because a lot of farmers are good at farming and not necessarily good at selling and running a business and, all that whole aspect. So that's how he excelled.
And the farm that he was working before he started selling, does that farm still run under your umbrella? Or
no, it was actually expropriated in the 50s to become part of the green belt around Ottawa. They were allowed to stay on the farm and farm it, and they could rent it. But as my grandfather got older and older, farming was just so much work. So my dad didn't want to do it. So he originally set up his first warehouse there. We rented there until about 1995. And then we amalgamated because about 93, we started the produce distribution company because we realized that we were specializing in eggs. And we realized that you couldn't just stay in one area. You had to have more items in your wagon to sell. Otherwise, costs kept going up. So you had to go to the customers with more stuff. Like literally, when I was a kid, I was delivering one case of eggs to a retail store. You can't afford to do that anymore. Just the costs are just gone crazy, right? Everything's gone up. You have to go with more stuff.
Right.
Would you say that the cost, so if you're delivering one thing of eggs, you're seeing real-time inflation then in your life, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Constantly.
If you can be building a business off of just eggs, now you have to diversify. Does that mean that the cost of production has gone up, the cost of everything has gone up, all of the inputs that you have there? Can you kind of explain to the listeners, because not all of them have an economic background, why that is from a business perspective?
Well, okay, so why you can't deliver for one case of eggs? Perfect example is that 30 years ago, a case of eggs was $30, okay? But your gas was 30 cents a liter or 40 cents a liter, right? You were only paying $6 an hour for wage. I could put a 16-year-old in a truck that just had a license and I could get insurance, no problem. I can't do any of those things anymore. So now a case of eggs sells for $40, but the gas is $1.50 a liter. The man behind the driver, the driver is no less than $15 an hour, but it's not because he's got to be 25 years old. Well, what 25-year-old is going to work for minimum wage? That's not going to happen. So that's gone up. The cost of the vehicle, that's gone up. So you can see all the input costs that are costing everything is way more than what we're actually selling the box for, or what we should be. Like, to make things equal, I should actually be selling a case of eggs for, let's say, $120 for everything to be relative for me to do the same thing. So it isn't. So all of the food pricing is actually quite cheap if you consider all of the input costs that have gone up. We've just become so much more efficient and had to do things with more equipment to get food to you at fairly inexpensive prices. Like produce, I bought American produce just yesterday for $15 a box Canadian, delivered to my door. So when you're thinking that produce has $12 US freight per box. So basically the FOB price is almost nothing. So food is still fairly inexpensive, and you look at all the other things that have gone up.
Do you think that the industry is going to be able to maintain that position, or are you just lagged behind the rest of the industries that are inflating?
Yeah, I think so, because as time goes on, we become more and more automated. Like just this computer here, like allows me to do my job anywhere in the world. So that's really helped. So I can get more work done in less time. So that's really what's changed the industry. Like automated computers for your accounting. Like I wouldn't even imagine how many people I'd need to have in accounting if I didn't have a computer. Like it's so central to my business that I don't care if there's the power out, but as long as I can run my computer, I can operate. If I didn't have phones, I can still operate. Whereas 30 years ago, if you didn't have power, like it was the end of the way. Everything was so hand done, and now it's so fully automated. But everything's getting automated. Like I wouldn't be surprised that within my generation or the end until I pass on the torch, that I'll probably be using drones to deliver small orders.
So
the only way to do it.
You've watched this transition happen. What was that like to watch happen? How did you adapt quickly? Was it a hard process, or
actually COVID-19 was great for us because it forced us to do a lot of things that we would never have done. Okay, because we were a family-run business, we had a lot of family members working for us, and then you start saying, well, I can't keep this guy, I can't let this guy go. He's been with me for 20 years, whereas he's not pulling his weight. And those things, COVID-19 changed it all. We had to. So that made us better as a company.
Right. You had to become more lean. There was no
absolutely.
choice.
Lean and mean. It was the right way to put it. Like we are unbelievable. We're right now, we're only about 9% down in sales from 2019. And we have 28% less in costs.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
I've heard that a lot. I've heard that COVID-19.
That's how lean and mean we got. And everyone's not working as many hours. It's weird, eh? We just became so much more efficient. We just had to work with our clientele. Like we were doing same day delivery, if you can believe that. You would place an order and we would deliver a refrigerated truck to your place in a couple of hours. We were doing that. And that's just one of the services that can no longer be offered.
Right.
It just doesn't make sense. So you have to plan a lot more so you can deliver a lot more.
Right. So you mentioned that you've become more efficient, and that's how your company has been able to fight some of this inflationary bubble that we are seeing. But when I go to the grocery store, I still notice that cost rising. Why is that?
Oh, because the grocery stores are basically making money hand over fist. Like when I go in, it just drives me crazy when I go in and look at the prices of produce, because I can work it out what a cost is per box. And when you're paying $3.99 for green peppers, that works out to $100 a case for a case of green peppers. And that's a normal price for you, $3.99 for green peppers, $3.99 for red pepper. You see it all the time. And I'm just blown away with how much markup there is at the retail level. And you'd say, well, the competition would prevent that. It doesn't seem to be.
Because everyone's cashing in on the party.
Retail. They can say, well, there's all these guys at Costco. They're gonna kill us. Well, it's quite the opposite. If anything, I refuse to go to Costco, even though I could save money. It's too big of stuff to buy. Okay. Secondly, I like to go to a small grocery store that's near my house for whatever little thing I need. But it's just a different weird. It's just a weird thing that's happening, that in these tight times, people are still using their local grocery store. They're not necessarily going to Costco for loading up. It's different. It's really weird.
Right. So how much markup do you think on average these grocery stores are pushing?
It depends the item, but produce is double at least. Produce, and then they'll have specials, obviously, which they could lose money on, but they don't care.
Now, is that because, let's say I've heard, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, but one of the things that people talk about a lot is, grocery stores put their produce out so that it's there, so that it, because if it's not there, then people aren't going to come to their store because that's some of the stuff that they're looking for, right?
Well, there is a lot of waste.
They throw out a lot of this, right?
Yeah, they do. They really do. Because one of my employees we brought back was working part-time during COVID at a grocery store, and he was just blown away with how much they were throwing out. Blown away. Anything that was left over on the night was threw in the garbage, even though it may or may not have been good. It's like it was a tremendous amount that was going in the garbage. So, like they said, 90 was it? It's some stupid number, like 30% of all the food that's being produced actually ends up in the garbage.
Wow.
Yeah, it is that big. It's crazy.
You said 70%.
No, 30%. It's about 30%. 30%. Depending on like produce is definitely 30, whereas dried goods is probably 0. Like cereal, stuff like that. It all depends on the volatility, but like there's a lot of waste in this industry.
So you started with eggs, which means you would have been a supply managed sector. Correct, Walk us through how that worked. Are you still in the supply managed sector?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So we're a food distributor. So no matter what, we're buying stuff that's in a supply management system. So you've got eggs, chicken, turkeys, cheese, dairy products. What else is supply managed? No, there's nothing in produce that's supply managed, except there's marketing boards that control the price or the minimum price, like apples. The minimum, like especially in Quebec, they really, really protect their apple growers because, well, imagine it takes 30 years before you actually bear fruit, right? So they've done a few things like that. The potato industry and PEI has built-in floor pricings so that potato farmers, this year it's going to be a disaster for them because PEI was cut off of selling all potatoes in the United States because of a fungus that they found on their product.
So they're going to be in a situation where would they sell that at this point?
They're dumping it into our market right now. Yeah, I was able to buy PEI potatoes this week cheaper than Quebec, which is just like a block away from me. Literally, I order everything from Quebec because where we are in Ottawa, right? Everything, all my produce comes from importers from Quebec.
So if that fungus isn't dangerous and it's suitable for our market, why did the U.S. shoot it down?
Because the U.S. never plays fair. They had lobby groups in Idaho saying, "Hey, we got too many potatoes. Stop letting all these PEI potato come in. Find a reason," and they did.
Right. So so I'm probably less familiar with the supply management system than you and David. Can you just kind of walk me through kind of like the Coles note start to finish, how it works and why it's beneficial?
Okay. So the supply management industry came in the early 70s because people were leaving the rural area and moving into the cities because that generation realized that they couldn't make money working on a farm. And the Americans can come in and dump their product because some of their industries are so massive that literally they should be 10 times bigger, but they're not. They're like 30 and 40 times bigger industries. So when you work with economies of scale, how can you compete with price? So they identified there was about 30 different sectors that were getting clobbered and killed, and number one was dairy. And American dairy farmers basically produce so much dairy compared to Canada. They had to come up with a scheme in order to guarantee that the farmer could make money. So how they did that was they controlled the supply. And Canada produces in those supply markets. So depending on the area, like chicken is 92%. Canada produces 92% of its domestic needs. Now, that calculation is what can vary from year to year based on how trends are going. So if there's more people eating chicken, well, then Canada will produce more chicken. But the other 8% all comes in from quotas. So you have to apply for the quotas, and if you qualify, then you qualify and you get some quota, and you're able to import stuff. So, but they basically raise the price based on their costs. So their costs, so it's all cost plus their profit. That's how you determine what the cost is of Canadian product. American product is always cheaper. So these quotas are very valuable because then you can buy the product in the United States for much cheaper and sell it. And obviously you're not going to sell below the Canadian price. Why would you, right? The market's already shorted. So you've now got the farmers making money. The distributors, people like me, we're making money because we're getting quotas. Now we're also buying domestic product as well because we need that other 92% still got to get filled. So you definitely don't make as much money as me as like a distributor. We don't make as much money on a supply management project, but we are keeping the industry alive in Canada. Now,
Right.
who pays for that?
We do.
The consumer, yeah.
The consumer, not the taxpayer. That's a difference. So it doesn't cost the taxpayer anything to run this program at all. It's all self-governed. The pricing is all built in for supply. Like Canada has something called surplus removal. So at some point, we may have, like for eggs, they're built into the price surplus removal. So let's say Alberta has all younger flock. They have no large eggs. Okay, they have only got small and medium. So there's an area where it's missing large eggs. But in the East, you could have too many large eggs and we don't know what to do with them. So what the marketing board will do is buy up that farmer's large and get them out to Alberta. That's what CEMA does. That's Canadian Egg Marketing Agency does. So each industry, so chicken has one, turkey has one, they all have these surplus removal programs and they're built into the price. So the farmers charge so much so that he can use that call, oh, I got way too many eggs, come pick up my eggs. I'm not in the marketing point. So there's still lots of farmers in these industries who actually have no marketing arm whatsoever. They basically use the system. Okay, come get my eggs. They're ready. And then it goes to a grading station, which would then market them and sell them to, let's say, Loblaws. So
Right.
So you go into a farmer, into like Loblaws, will say Burnbrae Farms. They may or may not be Burnbrae's eggs. They could be some other farmer anywhere else who's got a small production and can't afford grading stations, so he just sells it all to them, and they'll come pick it up. So that's how the industries work. So you have kept a lot of small farmers in the industry with a few bigger guys doing some of the packaging, the marketing, and the selling. That's what's happened.
It's a neat system that allows more Canadian farmers to participate and not to.
Well, just to give you an example, beef is not protected at all. And it's completely run by 3 American companies now. That's it. It's done. All the beef cattle, it's all run by Cargill, Swift, and I can't remember the other name. They're all out west, and that's it.
So what percentage of beef in Canada would be Canadian beef? 0?
That you're going to have? What you mean by that, I guess.
Okay,
right?
So the cows could be grown in Alberta. They could be shipped down to a killing plant in the States, and it becomes American meat.
Right.
Okay, vice versa, because there are killing plants in Alberta, so you could get some beef cattle let's say in Washington State that has, because they just don't have a killing plant everywhere. It's just not efficient, right? You have to have your killing plants running all the time, full lots, otherwise they don't become efficient. So that's where the thing changes. So if the cattle is killed in Canada, it becomes Canadian, even though it may or may not be a Canadian cow.
Interesting.
Basically.
So regardless of where it's raised, it is where it is slaughtered that determines what country it is from.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah. So that 8% that the states can sell us at a far lower cost, is that cost lower because they are just able to scale so much further?
Good point. Marketing, markets change day to day. Like, I would say yes, it'd be economies of scale that causes them to be so much cheaper. Like the egg farm, the egg place that I buy from has 5 million birds. Okay. And he's like number 30 on the list of how big he is in the United States. Okay. All of Canada has 5.4 million birds in eggs. So just to tell you how much bigger they are, yeah, they're that big because they don't just like, a lot of people don't realize how much food the United States produces for the world. It's an astronomical number. Like there's a reason why California is the 7th largest economy. It's bigger than all of Canada because they produce that much food. And now we're competing we have to compete here as Canadians. We have to compete with China, buying up citrus, produce, all that. So most times, so what's great is that Canada's made a lot of deals with, like they brought in deals with other countries and regions. So we have the CETA agreement, which is with all of Europe. Okay, so we can get fruit from Morocco. We get always stuff from Spain. We get lots of fruit from Spain. So all your citrus, lemons, all that comes from Spain, Morocco. We get stuff from Turkey. We get stuff from Egypt. All of that you can't get in the United States because they have such protectionist borders. You can't bring any of those citrus in because of the Florida citrus industry and because of the California citrus industry. So they can't even get any of that. Whereas we have access to all of that. But that's why our food is so much cheaper in Canada than it is in the United States for that reason.
Really, our food is cheaper. Walk me through.
Oh yeah, by far. Go to a grocery store in Florida and try and put a meal together. I couldn't believe how expensive everything was. And then to go and find
that is like the opposite of what people like think, right? But it's probably
no. It's very cheap to go eat at a fast food store. Yeah, it is. That is true. But if you go and buy regular produce and regular fruits and vegetables and groceries, you won't believe how expensive it is.
Wow, there's something that I had no idea of. So, and you think a lot of that's because of protectionism, or it seems to be that's why?
It's hard to say. Like I think Canadians are extremely competitive when it comes to the food industry. Like there is a lot of retail stores. There is a lot, and I think it's because Canadians really care about quality and like to cook, and it's like food is a normal, it's a very large part of our society. Whereas the States, it's more fast food, move on. It's just a different way of thinking, right?
Right.
Like I'd never go to McDonald's to eat. Just never going to do it.
No, it's not for me. I'm not about that life.
Okay, guys. Okay, I sometimes get my breakfast sandwiches, but so I'm really interested in the development of this business because like generational businesses, family businesses, these are like how you build long-term wealth. You guys went from the farm to building a large business that has been passed down generation to generation. That doesn't happen a lot.
It doesn't.
How did that happen? Walk us through that part of the story, because I mean that is a success story. It's a story of of commitment to a goal and commitment to building something. You've built something that is lasting, and that doesn't happen all the time. How did it happen from your perspective?
I guess maybe the best way is that when you're in an entrepreneurial family, the genes just kind of rub off. Our regular discussions at home as I was growing up, well, what did you do in business today? How much did you get this customer? Did you talk about this problem? So, that's we would literally just sit there and pick my dad's brain all at dinner. My mom would have to come in and say, enough about business. And we were just always talking about it, right? So once entrepreneurs are a different type, they never think about, well, I can't do that. No, how am I going to do that? And how am I going to get someone to do it for me? That's how entrepreneurs do it. And then how am I going to make money doing it? That's how we think. So it's from one business to the next. I'm always looking for, you're always looking for the next problem and solution, right? So like we got into processing fruits and vegetables. So we own another company that's a sideline that all they do is transform fruits and vegetables because the most expensive part in a kitchen now is labor. So if they can have big events and don't have to hire staff because that takes a long time. They can just buy it pre-ready for me. So like a lot of hotels are doing that. So
like platters and that kind of thing.
Not platters. So I can say let's say all their peppers are cut up. Like prepping is it takes a lot of time, right? So like we sell 1 case of romaine a day for every 25 cases of chopped romaine we sell.
Right.
Imagine how much romaine you use in a salad, right? It has to be washed. What happens if the guy washing it's lazy and you got a piece of sand in your salad? You'll send it back and probably never come back to the restaurant. So all restaurants want everything pre-washed, pre-ready, just assemble. Okay, I've got my own sauce done.
I used to be that guy. I know that. I know.
I
used to wash that romaine, but my romaine had no sand.
Would you have to cut it as well, Zach?
Oh yeah, I worked prep in restaurants for a long time.
It's a lot of work. Yeah.
It's very time consuming. The time that you spend just cutting up vegetables. It doesn't like you don't think about it being a long process when you're cutting up vegetables to make dinner for you or your family, but when you're cutting up vegetables for the 300 people that might dine at that establishment that day, it's a lot of freaking vegetables.
Yeah.
And it's very time consuming. Yeah.
So is that automated then?
Some of it, but it's still labor intensive as well, because at the end of the day, you still have to have someone look and pick out bad lettuce, right? So I found that the whole, like say 90% of my staff is women in there just because of quality assurance.
Right. Because the men just
have a few guys that work there that do some of the heavier lifting, and that's about it. But mostly it's all women.
Because the men just don't pay close enough attention, basically.
They don't. It's just the way it is.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is.
So that's an interesting segue. You have this side company that is now processing foods to take some of the labor pressure off of your buyers. How has this whole COVID situation and the inflation that we are now seeing affected your buyers overall?
Well, that's what they've found out, because their costs are all going up. So they're calling me. Okay, I've got this function where I got to feed 300 people, but I can't hire a guy for a day. So they'll call me and say, I need this process, I need this peeled, I need like a peeled onions, I need this diced up. So all I got to do is just cook it when it's here, so I don't have to hire all that staff. So I'm giving them value added, so that they can keep their costs down, and they know exactly what the finished cost them because they have a bill. This is what I got for 12 pounds. Whereas if you buy a case, you don't know if you're going to get 12 pounds, and the guy cutting it might be higher yield, lower yield, so you don't know what your real costs are. And 9 times out of 10, once you get more and more exact with these costs, you just pass it on to the event, right?
Right.
So they know exactly what things cost. So like I've had companies call me and say, okay, I need 10 pounds of peeled cipollini onions. The cipollini onions is this big, and they want them all peeled. Do you know how labor intensive it was? And when I gave them the price, says, oh, that's great. I don't have to get 3 people to do it anymore. I said, yeah, okay, all right, that's what it costs. And he says, that's what it costs.
Yeah, that makes sense. So what is it about your process that allows you to be more efficient?
That's a good question. I think the best way to describe it is that we have long-term employees that have been doing it for so long, and they can do things so much faster than new employees. So when you get really, really down to it, our staff is extremely efficient at what they do and how they do it. And basically, if they can do the job in 30 hours instead of 45, they're still going to get the same pay from me. So I'm very happy for them to be very dynamic and very, very effective at what they want to do. I'm always the type of person, well, if the job is done, I don't need you to stay here. Just keep your phone on.
So do they don't get paid per hour then? You don't pay your staff?
No, but just like normal labor, like my drivers, they have to get paid by the hour because that all has to be tracked. My staff in the warehouse, they all get paid by the hour, but they're all working the same shifts. Like other than people that I need, some jobs you have to be here, right? In case the door opens or someone's there to answer the door. So they're always getting paid the same hours. They know their hours every day, so it's always the same. But some of my like office staff, I don't care if you work from, if you can take all your calls, work from home, that's fine with me.
So, well, what about the processors? So you've got this group of people that have become really good at processing food.
Oh yeah, so processing is another thing. So what's everyone's saying in that. So the key thing when you're buying fruits and vegetables is to never buy a deal because your yields aren't high enough, because the labor doesn't change. It's all about the yield and the product. So you have to actually buy the best of the best stuff to process, which most people don't ever figure out. They always want to buy the deal because, oh, I got to cut it off and I'm going to make more money. Well, actually, you don't, because your product doesn't last as long because you have to have a shelf life after you've processed it. You can't just go bad in a day. You need people that know what they're doing, because someone doesn't know how to cut a romaine. He could give you 10%. He could give you 50% yield, whereas the other person that knows how to cut it right could give you another 20%. So that other 20% translates into bag product that I get to sell. So it's like I said, I found people that have been with me since we've opened, and it's mostly girls, and we let some of them go during the pandemic, but that's all back now. Their sales are up in processing right now. So they're all back to full staff. And it's, like I said, people, you have to find the right people. And it tends to always be women. I don't know why, but they just.
We've actually, Zach and I have talked about this on previous episodes with our other cousin Dan, but it really does come down to the quality of labor in almost all of these.
Absolutely,
things,
absolutely. Quality of labor, and especially, and like most of my staff is old too. Like I'm talking like older than 60, and they're still with me, and no plans on me getting rid of them because they're just that efficient at what they do.
So what are you going to do when they age out?
Well,
like how are you?
Well, how we're doing it? Well, we've got 2 young kids that are coming in. You're hired one of them. He's planning to go into the business, into the main business. So he's going to be taken over. They're going to be either retiring or, I hate to say it, dying.
Right.
But
yeah. Because
I had one employee that was working for me. He was 81 years old, and he finally retired. He was dead within 2 weeks. Yep.
Wow.
Yep. You know,
he retired at 80.
Yeah, retired at 80 and was dead in 2 weeks.
I've heard that actually as an overarching concept, and this is a bit of an aside, but there is evidence to suggest that when you give up contributing in your life, you hurry along the end of your life.
That's true. It is true. It's absolutely true. Like my dad's still working for us now, and he says, you can never fire me. That's part of the deal. I gave you the company, but I have to keep working.
Right.
Because
my dad is 77 and he's still here working every day.
Because if you fire me, I'll die.
How much he admires his grandpa's work ethic and ability to just perform continually. So what do you think it takes? Because like a lot of people would love to be saying, oh, I'm good at this thing. I'm going to start doing it. I'm going to get really good at it.
Mm-hmm.
And yet not a lot of people do, right? Most people would be envious of your position. Like this is something I talked about a lot of my entrepreneurial friends and people we've had on this podcast a lot of people don't understand how much work it takes, right? So can you walk us through like,
how about the fact that I've had to remortgage my house 3 times and put the money into the business? That's just a normal thing. That's a normal thing. Oh, honey, here, come and sign all the paperwork. I need more money. We're cash light right now. It's just normal entrepreneurial. You literally have to risk everything that you built to maybe work tomorrow.
To maybe get it through, to hope that it happens, right? Yeah. So walk us through how that feels and why most people, in your opinion, can't do it.
Because I guess the best way is that you have to be born into it. It's very hard to just become an entrepreneur and start something. Like it's like I said, it's a different thing. How about you're going to start tomorrow? So you got this job that's paying, let's say it's paying you $75,000 a year. Good job. Okay. And all of a sudden you had this idea, and tomorrow you're not going to get paid until that idea turns into something that you've made. It could be a year. It could be 5 years. So that's why.
Yeah.
You're not going to get paid. There's no guarantee until you make it into something that's going to pay you. That's why people don't start. That's why they start small on the side with something little. And then if it turns, that's why someone will start a cookbook, right? Then they start in the cookbook. Well, the cookbook took off. Oh, well, maybe I should go into the cooking industry and become maybe I can get a small little TV show and start there. So it's like one of my cousins, she's doing that. And she's gone from basic, but there was years that she had no money coming in, and now she's on CTV all the time as cooking shows. She's written many cooking books, and she's gone into that industry. But she couldn't have done it without her husband, because her husband was constantly working.
Right.
So he had money coming in. So she could never have been as successful without his help, because there'd be no money coming in. And she was still raising a family at the same time. So starting your own, I was lucky because I started on my dad's shoulders. Okay. So that was my advantage. Okay. Ryan, when he gets in, well, he'll start on my shoulders. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's really an advantage.
Huge, massive advantage. And really that's what about building a legacy is about, right? Is and that's what I find so impressive about what you've done. And like so few people have done it, because a lot of people will, start a business and then they'll just sell it,
That's a great idea. That works too. There's a lot, especially high tech. There's a lot. That's a great way to make money. Sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
That happened a lot in the early 70s and 80s in high tech, right? Anybody with a new idea he got bought up for millions of dollars. Like, how is that possible?
Exactly. So, but one is like, it's kind of different models of going about things, right? It's the quick, but then it seems to me when those people, like the tech guys, like you said, they have all this money, but they don't have what Ryan has, which is a desire to push things forward in terms of legacy. So
correct, yes.
What do you think is the difference there? Like, it's not just about money here. There's something else going on.
Well, I don't know. Quality of life has one thing to do with it. Like coming to work is, like we were just saying, that you have to have a purpose to get up on Monday morning, right? So that day, the day that you're in an industry where you cannot stand Monday and don't want to go to work, because then you need to fix that, okay? Because quality of life is something important, especially if you want to continue with a legacy. So I actually like Mondays. I actually like to do my job. I like to negotiate with people. I like to buy and sell. I like that. My brother does most of the selling, so he's likes to talk to clients. I'm not good with that. I'm good with the negotiating, the operating of the business, the buying, the buying of the product. He's good with the communicating, like the large accounts. That's what he takes care of all the time, like the Aramarks, the big hotels. It's all of his babies. And sometimes they don't need a lot of stroking, but sometimes it just takes that one call from him, and all of a sudden we've got a new product, we've got a new line, and boom, because he knows them, it gets sold. So, and it also has something to deal with the fact that all this food keeps going up in price. I own this big food warehouse that I can just take home, right? So that is a big plus.
That's a handy perk for sure.
That is beneficial. So forward thinking, with the costs rising, where do you see that landing? Are costs going to continue to rise? Is there something that we can do to mitigate it? What does the future of the industry look like, in your opinion?
Well, the industry, the costs are definitely going up, and they always will go up, and that's why you have to be in the industry to be inflationary proof, because you're going with it, right? But if you're sitting at home retired, you're not going with it. You're still getting your fixed income, and everything else is going up. So that's why you have to keep staying in the business.
Do you see on your end wages going up because inflation is hitting, or not yet?
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah,
I had to be very proactive this during COVID to make sure I kept my drivers, because drivers are very, very hard to get, and once you get a good driver, it's very, very, he can make or break your company. You can have the best product in the world, you can have the best service in the world, and you can have the cheapest price. But as soon as that driver walks in and tells your customer to F off, everything is out the window.
Okay, walk me through that a little bit more. That's really interesting. There's a linchpin of your business, right? Is that most people probably wouldn't know. They wouldn't know selling food is contingent on drivers being polite.
Exactly. Well, that's every business, right?
Right. True.
Waitress.
True.
Well, my brother just said, "What happens to a waitress?" Right? You can have the best food in a restaurant, and all of a sudden your waitress is not too bright, can't take an order properly, screws it up. Not the food, not the guy not the chef, not the crew, not it's your waitress did everything to screw you up. That's why good restaurants through COVID. It's funny how they all have the same servers that came back.
True. A good point.
Like I go to regular restaurants. It's always the same. It's always the same service.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I hadn't thought of that at all.
It's funny. It's funny to think that, because you would think that the seller of your company would be the forward-facing person within that company, but you don't necessarily think of the driver also being a point of contact.
Yes, the seller is the forward-facing person. He's talking to the person making the decision who's buying the stuff, right?
Yeah.
So that's where I like to have owners to owners, because then employees don't dictate what happens in your company.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so like, I hate when a chef changes at a restaurant who's doing all the buying. I hate that, because now I have to reestablish all new relationships with a chef. Whereas if I've established a relationship with the owner, it doesn't matter if the chef changes, because the owner is making decisions where that particular place is buying from.
Right.
That's smart.
Yeah.
That's smart.
Yeah. You've always got to. So sorry. Go ahead.
So I'm really interested in this, how you've built this out, but I'm also interested in, like, what have been the moments of greatest crisis that you overcame? Because I think that'll, that kind of story, so often we don't hear those stories, but I think they're so important, because that overcoming is what kind of gets us through things, right?
Well, I'd say the worst crisis we had was buying out partners. That would be the worst crisis that we had over the past years. We had one big crisis, which was we got in a big fight with an American company, and we went to court, and we found out we didn't have as much money as them, and that was pretty devastating to us. But we recovered. We always do, because
and that just made the court fight go on a long.
Yeah, and the costs, right? And then whenever you lose, you got to pay everything. So yeah. So those things, but I think the difference is that my brother and I are willing to work for nothing. We'll just change the whole world, cut our salaries, do whatever it takes. We'll be the last two persons in the building if that's what it takes. And that's true entrepreneurship. That's how hard and lean sometimes you got to get.
Yeah, you got to be willing. Like that's what I think a lot of people that are in the employee mindset, and I call it the employee mindset versus the owner mindset. Yep. In the employee mindset, it's like, well, I'm not working if there's no money involved, which is totally fair, right? You have no ownership. Why would you work? But the ownership mindset is, I own this thing, and I'm going to do whatever it takes to make it work.
Yeah, sure. And you're always in business to try and make more than just your salary. But there's been many years where that's all you did make was, thank God I made my salary.
Yeah.
There's always years like that. There's up and downs. We had one year we had avian flu in the United States, and we're an egg importer, and we have quota. And if you don't use your quota, you lose it. So.
And you don't want to lose that quota, because there's your profit margins. There's your.
So we were buying eggs for $3 US a dozen and selling them here for $2.65, $2.70 Canadian.
Just to keep your quota.
Just to make sure I kept my quota. Yep.
Right. That's an interesting question. How do you go about getting that quota, and how is the quota regulated? Because there's 8% sitting there that you can.
Okay.
I mean, I guess you can profit off of more. What controls, or who controls how much each company can take?
Okay. So it depends on what quota you're going to go for, and whether you have traditional quota, whether you have production quota, whether you have processing quota. So it's all divided. All right. So when supply management came in, there was a whole bunch of companies importing like crazy and selling, just like I do in fruits and vegetables. And my dad was one of them. He was importing eggs like crazy, okay, and selling them in here all over Canada. They closed the border. Well, you just can't expropriate without compensation. So basically, to keep him happy, they had to give him traditional quota. So there was quite a few companies that got traditional quota. So we have traditional egg quota, which we're allowed to apply for every year, provided we stay in the business selling eggs. Okay. So that's how we got
grandfathered in, basically.
Pretty much. Okay. But there's lots of companies that still have that grandfather and are still operating, and they're on their third generation, fourth generation. And their generation has bought those companies based on having those quotas. So like milk quota, a milk farmer, right? He can give his farm for free to his family, provided they keep farming the milk. Okay. But it's a license to print money.
Yeah, because you got a guaranteed buyer.
No, just because of the egg quota, not egg quota, but milk quota is worth that much more, especially in Quebec because the price is so high.
Right.
So
yeah,
they but they were in the industry when it was not making any money, and now they are. So yeah.
So
that's production. Now that's production quota. Okay.
Yeah.
That's producer. That's completely different than me. Okay. That's not what I'm into. So I can apply for chicken quota through distribution, and I have to prove that I have so much kilos that I'm selling. And then there's so many loads that are divided for the whole industry, and you get your equal portion of that. Okay. So you have to apply for them. You have to every year. It's a long process of going through the applications. You got to put it all in. It's just how we regulate supply management.
Yeah. So as an entrepreneur in Canada who's built a business that's successful, what do you love about this country? Because we forgot to ask that at the beginning, Zach.
You know what I like? The best part about, hard to say, that's a good question. What do you like most about your country? I like Medicare. I like the fact that my employees who take their kids to go play soccer and that kid breaks his leg doesn't have to go mortgage the house because kid needs a cast. I like 4 seasons. Okay. I like the fact that people are polite in Canada, and I like the fact that I can walk down the street and not worry about someone shooting me. Okay.
Nice perk.
Those are good things. Yeah.
I like the fact when I'm touring abroad that everyone says, "Oh, thank God you're not American, you're Canadian."
Yeah.
I think that's one of our biggest ones.
We hear that. Hear that quite often. Yeah.
It's true, right?
Take notes, Americans. Take notes.
People like traveling and not being American, for sure. So if you had to give advice to people in business and in life in how to become successful, what would that advice be?
I'd say I wouldn't tell you because I only share that with my kids.
There you go.
No, I'd say the biggest thing, if you're going to start something, make sure you got enough money.
Yeah.
Okay, 'cause you see so many restaurants opening up, and the biggest problem why they don't go down is underfunding, undercapitalization. And if you haven't got the money, you're going to have to partner up with someone that does. It's about the only way you're going to do it.
Yeah, don't just go on a hope and a prayer that somehow you're going to revenue this thing out of.
No, you're not. You need a lot of money to make money. And I mean, a lot of money. Like a restaurant, a good restaurant, I'd say you need $3 million, and that's renting the place.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And you're renting the place at $3 million. That's what you need. This kitchen alone is going to cost you more than $1 million.
Restaurants have very low margin too, right?
No, actually, no. They have very good margins. They basically try and work on a 33% food cost, 33% labor costs. Okay, and then the rest is 33% is their grosses. Is what they make. Okay, that's the model they're trying to. But with cost now, it's more like 40% is food costs, and maybe 35 is. So yeah, their margins are going down. But you had noticed
prices are going up for sure.
Absolutely, you can't go out to a restaurant. It's going to be $8 for a beer, right?
Oh yeah,
it's just the way. That's just what it is.
Yep.
It's going to be $12.
I remember when, and it wasn't that long ago. It was $10 for a pitcher.
But I think drinking and driving changed that. Okay, I think that really, really changed that. So you can't go to a restaurant or to a bar and get wasted anymore.
No.
So A, you can't afford it. Okay. B, how are you going to get home? Well, there is Uber, but I mean, literally so you're just going to the restaurant for the one drink. So whether you have the one drink or whether you had 5, the restaurant's still got to make the same on the table. Because you're there for 2 or 3 hours. So that's why booze has gone up so much.
Oh, so it's not input costs. It's not really inflation. It's just like they're like,
Listen,
people are only going to get one of these. So let's make sure we get our money out of it.
Pretty much. Yeah.
There you go.
That's interesting.
That's why they have places that they say, okay, we'll charge you a corking fee. It's $20.
Yeah.
You bring your own wine, but it's $20.
Right.
That's what they need.
Right.
Huh.
I have one more question for you before we wrap up.
Sure.
You would definitely be someone who can speak to this. I hear rumor of you hear all the time in the news about supply chain crises, right? The supply
Yep.
chain, the supply chain, the supply chain. Do you think that's going to affect the food industry? Do you see
Oh, it already has.
shortages?
Absolutely.
Do you see
It already has.
shortages in grocery stores right now?
Yeah. Yeah, there's lots of shortages in grocery stores. Like right now, you can't get small containers of French's mustard
Really?
because
Why?
because the packaging is stuck somewhere in a container in the West Coast. The product's available; it's made here in Canada, but the packaging came from maybe China or somewhere else.
Mm.
That's a big supply problem.
And are you seeing that across the board, or is it really
Yeah,
more
across the board.
niche things? Yeah,
Across the board. 2 years ago there was that big oil plant in that produces food oil in Toronto that burned down. It's never been replaced, so we're having constant shortages of cooking oil. And
because we don't
it's
produce it
doubled-
anymore.
because the supply is not there anymore, and it's doubled in price. The main ingredient that you use in a restaurant, the fryer, the oil, now costs twice as much as it did.
Wow.
Yeah, so all those pub food that you thought was a deal, no, it's all pub food's expensive now.
Right. True.
Yeah.
True.
Just based off of vegetable oil cost because a factory burned down.
You got it.
Crazy.
It hasn't been replaced yet.
One factory.
Well, there's not that many in Canada because it's it had become such a tight margin item that you had to be so massive in order for it to make money. That's why. So
Which
maybe
is why
three or four in all of Canada.
Which is why no one has stepped in to fill the gap, because your barrier to entry to get to that level is so great.
You got it.
Makes sense.
Exactly right.
So you're just going to pay a lot for
Well,
chicken
and also
wings.
because you're like, I'm going to put all this capital into this. I'm going to put all this capital into this, and my margin's going to be small, and I'm never going to be able to convince people capital to come and invest in this if your margin's that small, right?
Exactly right.
Huh.
You put it in the stock market, make 5%, right?
Yeah.
By one of the banks.
Yeah, exactly. Just sit on it.
And never have to worry about it. That's really, you're absolutely right. Why would you do it?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Well,
so
this
are
has
there
been
products
great.
going forward that are going to be short that are not yet short that you can see?
Crystal ball. I don't know.
Yeah.
Day to
Fair
day, I
enough.
just deal with it every day. Oh, can't get it. Okay, what's the alternative? Well, we don't have. Okay, then we don't have. Let me tell you.
Yeah.
I can't invent
I
it.
get it.
I can't get it. I can't invent it. So you'll notice. Haven't you noticed in the grocery store that so many empty shelves?
Yeah. Yeah,
It's
of
not
course.
because they don't want to have it. It's because they can't get it.
Yeah.
There's lots of items that are short.
So you wouldn't say if you were speculating that this is going to get worse or better. You have no idea.
Well, I did speculate that Cargill was going to go on strike. So I told my buyer, "Hey, buy up all the beef because they're probably going to be short in the next 2 weeks." It was averted. Thank God, I just read that, so it was averted. But the Cargill plant that's in Alberta produces 40% of all the beef in Canada.
Yeah, it would be bad if that one. Yeah, exactly.
Well, when they hit the COVID outbreak, it was shut down for 2 weeks. It was a disaster.
Yeah.
For the price,
Well, and
price
actually,
and
that's
supply.
something I've noticed is that beef prices are going way up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
beef is up a lot, but it's back down to about normal.
Okay, so it's a lot of volatility right now, you'd say.
Yeah, it's kind of leveled off now, and it always goes up at Christmas anyways, and then it falls in January anyways. So it's doing what it normal. It's been basically a normal year.
Okay.
It was high this summer though. It was very high this summer.
Yeah, it was really high.
Yeah, but it's
Well, there's
back to
also a
normal.
drought out here in Alberta, so it's probably that's been affecting, like they were killing off the herds faster and things like that. But
Right.
no.
Well, Jordan, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate you coming on. Is there anything else that you would like to leave with the listeners?
No, thanks very much. It was great to talk to you guys.
Thank you for listening to The Canadian Story. You can find us on Instagram and Twitter at The CAD Story. That's The CAD Story. If you enjoy this podcast, please share it with your friends and family. Let's work together to remind Canadians how great their country is.